It is clear that bad actors who seek to do damage to the West have been slowly infiltrating the institutions. And there's some strategic philosophers in the past that said the way to conquer the West is not through troops, it's through the long march through its institutions. So, and because China thinks in 25-year blocks, right? And other, people think long range. We're trapped in these 4-year election cycles in the West, which really means 2 years, which means placating the people who are asking for the most. So we can't actually do a long-term plan like we should for our family or our company. But they know that if we just put in money slowly, nobody will notice. We'll get footholds. Nobody will investigate. And right now our educational system is an absolute disaster. Like the universities, 90% should be shut down or redone. They're not providing what they need to be. And they've been captured, ideologically captured.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Sovereign Sphere. I'm Karla Treadway, and I have with me today the rogue lawyer, Phillip Millar. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Karla.
So I'm sure a lot of my listeners here already know who you are. I'll give them a brief rundown here. You're a Canadian criminal defense lawyer, former Special Forces member, and a outspoken commentator known online as the Rogue Lawyer, drawing on firsthand experience in both war zones and courtrooms. You built a reputation for tackling the topics that most people are too afraid to touch, from bail reform and media bias to immigration, free speech, and the erosion of Western institutions.
I had 3 law offices across Canada, and we do a whole bunch of law, taking on some pretty big cases that have been in the news, represented the military, guys who were screwed over by the vaccine. Warrant Officer Topp, if you remember that amazing guy who walked across Canada when he was protesting, he was my client.
He actually stayed with us when he was crossing Canada. I took him out on the lake.
Cool. Great human being.
Yes.
Yeah. And now I spend, more of my time in the kind of business strategy and scaling. But I find the political strategy is really relevant. Same kind of principles apply to good societal strategy as do to business strategy.
I mean, if the country was run like a business, we'd probably be in a much better state right now.
Yeah, and if it was a business, we'd be in receivership and we'd have shareholder disputes and it'd be just a giant cluster truck, as I call it. Am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
You can do whatever you want on this podcast. Yeah.
Very cool.
So I wanted to talk about some of the recent verdicts, recent acts of crime that we've been seeing. I appreciate some of your takes on these issues. And I wanted to start off with, what is the tolerance paradox that you've been talking about? And why do you think Western societies or, Canada in general are especially vulnerable to it?
Yeah, I love to kind of get these terms that capture what's going on because it's hard to communicate this to everybody out there. But the tolerance paradox is the concept of, if well-intentioned people, because a lot of people on one side of the political spectrum are being caring to the point of a fault. But if you become so tolerant that you tolerate everything, well, then you're eventually going to tolerate intolerant people. And because you tolerate intolerant people, they're going to have more power. So they're going to take over, and then they're not going to tolerate anyone. So when you when you embrace this tolerance as a policy, it's really an invitation to allow bad actors to take over a period of time. And so well-intentioned, but completely naive and self-destructive.
Well, and words are really powerful. One thing that I've noticed is, I guess people are just busy, so they don't really ask a whole lot of questions past the label. So one thing that I've noticed left-leaning governments do a really good job of is just claim a title. We are the party of love and inclusion. We are the party of tolerance. We are the party, that respects gay rights, for example. And then the assumption is, if you're not that, then you're hateful, you're a bigot, you hate gay people. And unfortunately, it seems like it really is that easy to sway public opinion just by claiming that label before the other side gets to.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. If you just look at it from parenting, and I think the best example is you look at a celebrity's kids, they're all fucked up. Like they're on medication by 5. They either believe they're an animal or 6 different genders with feathers on their heads. So a parent, tolerance, being nice is is nice, but being nice is also destructive. Like if you let your kid eat as much junk food as they want, watch TV all day long, you're not necessarily being, like you're ruining them. And that's happening to society. We're telling everybody it's not your fault. You don't have to take accountability for the fact that you don't want to work and that you're fried. You're owed everything. We're essentially making spoiled brats for citizens. And we all know who've raised kids or who have been in play. Some of our best citizens are ones that came from places of struggle. They knew how lucky they were. They come and, struggle is what builds character. And these quote self-appointed kind people are trying to remove struggle from everybody, and that's not the path to strength. And they make it look like it's because they care. It's really their own identity gets a kick out of being this person who's giving away money. The crappy thing is it's generally other people's money that they're giving away, and other people's societies or communities that they're ruining from their pedestals where they're lecturing us all on how to be a good person. It's just a shame because it started happening around the same point as digital media, and negative labels on digital media kind of had a disproportionate silencing effect, I think. So, and you were alluding to it in the intro to that piece. There's another thing called social desirability bias. And if you're just in the suburbs, most people don't want to be labeled hateful, racist, sexist, fascist, whatever. So people are saying things that they don't actually believe. And everybody is just waiting for somebody to say, actually, I think it's BS that like boys should be in our girls' change room, but nobody wants to say it. So they're putting an outward face on that they think is socially desirable. But if somebody just put up their hand, probably 80% of the moms and dads would agree with them. And that's what we're fighting against.
There's an interesting thing I've witnessed that seems to be new in like the last 5 or 6 years too, when you confront someone with very clear evidence, a lot of people just kind of glaze over. They don't want to accept it. Like an easy example I can think of is I was criticizing the school system when they had these very overtly sexual books that they were putting in elementary schools. And people are like, nope, that's not happening. And I pulled up these Planned Parent cards that I believe is in Saskatchewan, that the school board partnered with Planned Parenthood, and they were handing out these A to Z sex cards with the most disgusting things that I've ever heard of as an adult woman. I had to look up what most of these things were, and they were handing them out to small children. And I remember showing the cards to someone, and yeah, this weird like disconnection. No, I'm not, my eyes must be lying to me. That can't actually be happening. Are you seeing that too?
Oh yeah, there's a tilt that happens, but we've promoted over the last decade or so, our institutions and some corporations have promoted compliant people rather than critical thinkers who will say, hey, that doesn't make sense. And when you do that for over a decade, they take over the institutions. And then they're in a self-replicating bubble where they're all having the same kumbaya safe space committee meetings once a week, right? Nobody gets fired because it's a giant budget of a corporation or a government, and they're not used to being challenged. And then you actually come up and say, look, the emperor's not wearing any clothes. And they're like, well, I don't know what you're saying. It's really frustrating. There was I can't remember what, I was on some human behavior panel. It's almost twice as easy to fool somebody into believing something is true than it is to convince them that they were fooled. You know what I mean? So it's much harder. So once somebody has bought into something, they've tied their identity to it, they've gone to the meetings, they now see themselves as the protector of these people or this. They're not really even interested in evidence anymore. It's like that First Nations guy a couple of days ago who said, when he was confronted with the no evidence of the mass graves, he's like, well, we're an oral tradition. We don't need that type of evidence. We just go to the graves and we hear the voices. So keep giving us the checks. Like it's freaking lunacy. There's injustices done to First Nations people, but it doesn't mean two things can be true or right. We can also say, yeah, but if you're going to get hundreds of millions of dollars in checks, you're going to have some evidence that this happened.
If you're saying that a crime was committed, a mass murder, then there should absolutely be an investigation with tangible proof, not just we heard voices whispering. That makes sense.
It's infecting. Like I was a prosecutor, and I do some high end case defense work when I believe the person's innocent, but it's infecting everywhere. Like justice goes to the person who is labeled as the oppressed. And the oppressor, they don't even want to hear any evidence. So if you're just labeled as the oppressor, you're guilty. And the government's just writing checks. Yeah, it was happening in the military. I represented General Whalen on a big case, but they were writing $100,000 checks to anybody who said something happened to them that was sexual in nature over the last 20 years. And there was a lot of sexual assaults that weren't reported, and that system needed to be fixed, but nobody was prepared to consider that both men and women will lie for self-interested purposes. And if you're going to give somebody a $100,000 tax-free check who also, lies on their taxes, like you're going to have these claims that require actual proof. And it doesn't mean that you don't care about protecting our vulnerable. It's just we can't move our society away from needing evidence to assert a claim to be true.
My worry, of course, is that we don't have a functioning media. And I think CBC, CTV, they're definitely losing their power. It is quite frightening that right now they want to give CBC more money. They want them to be able to fight misinformation for the government and be the arbitrators of truth. I was saying to a friend the other day, the average person, and I can't fault them, thinks that they're well informed, especially if they're watching multiple news sources, CBC, CTV, global. So they think they're getting a wide coverage of opinion, but they're not. But let's say they take that a step further. Let's say they're a political nerd like me and actually watch a CPAC video, which no one's getting that far, but let's say they do. Well, you have Mark Carney and the Liberals standing up and saying things like, we're the fastest growing economy in the G7 and life's never been more affordable. That's a lie. So now they need to actually dig into documents and charts to find out if that's true. Hence the power of independent media and why they're trying to squash us. Like, I can't fault the average person because you actually have to do some super sleuthing at times to find out what's actually going on.
It's just a giant, I just mourn for the loss of journalism. I'm working with a guy who's a producer on a radio show, and he's like an old school journalist. He's gone to war zones. And when traditional media died, like those investigative journalism, there wasn't space for them at these new media places where they kind of want elite, educated people who just say what they're told to say and make an argument. And nobody, it's really hard for busy people trying to pay the mortgage, build a business, take care of kids, to go get the information. And, on both sides, independent media also has a series of whack jobs, but then half of them who are labeled whack jobs end up being onto something. So it's like, how do you figure out where you can get that verifiable news that we used to get in a newsroom when there was an editor saying, this has to be triple checked, signed off. Did you get both sides of the story? That institution is gone. And we're trying to replace it with our content. Right. But there's equally on the other side, people who are trying to create a completely different narrative through independent media, and so it's like this war of independent podcasters where, I'm arguing against Hassam Piker, who's saying Mao is the best leader in the century, and just ignoring that he killed 50 million freaking of his own people. Like, I just want to stick a fork in my eye. It's so frustrating. We're supposed to be civilized, but we seem dumber than the people who were using leeches to cure cancer 150 years ago.
We just need leeches over our eyeballs at this point so we don't have to witness them.
Oh my God, that's a visual. And the boomers, God bless the boomers with all their money, and they had a great go. And they just sit at home and they listen any of the top media channels. They're all getting money from the government, and they're not getting robust, because those boomers would really go more conservative if they were getting good information, but they're just being fed pablum to make them feel good about themselves, and they vote. And so it's very hard to win an election on the conservative side.
I'm a big fan of those street interviews because what's very clear is that people take in information, but they never ask a secondary question like, is this true? So those street interviews are so excellent. When you have a protester, for example, talking about fascism, and the person says, can you define that for me? I watched a video the other day, and it was a man in praise of socialism. And he goes, yeah, it's great. We're all hanging out. It's all about community. We're going out more than ever. We're all gathering together. And this woman was like, I think we're so cooked because he's confusing socialism with socializing.
Socializing. That's amazing. That was a great investment in that gender studies degree that guy got. In terms of,
Man. But when it comes to the boomers, I understand why they're like, everything's great. They made a lot of money off of their properties. But the secondary question that they're not asking themselves, and I've seen this on the street, is, yeah, but the entire next generation, like your kids, your grandkid, everyone is going to suffer for this right now. Should they? Should they have to suffer for the system? And that's another kind of glazing over moment. They don't want to have to address reality and what's actually true.
That was brilliant. Like the dental benefits for seniors was brilliant to get that vote. Like, but okay, I'm glad you got free dental. You had like the best ride ever, but maybe your kids and grandkids should be able to afford homes. Because generally we were supposed to leave the next generation better off. And I just feel, I can't tell you how many boomers I meet are like, we're just going to spend all our money because our kids are going to have to work for it. I'm like, well, you rode the great wave. Your kids don't have the same wave, and you're just happily spending it all. And it's there's an indulgence to Canada. We've had it too good for too long. We used to be tough. We used to be resilient. We used to struggle, and we've had it too good too long. And then you couple that with saying, oh, just bring a bunch of people in who we don't check out, and they're just going to be good people. They're not going to take advantage of us. And it's a shit show. Like
I mean, I don't want to be rude to people that are like my elders, but there's a little self-check there. Like, yes, you worked hard, but things were easier than ever for you. You could buy a house for 60 grand back then. You had an abundance of work. You didn't have to face AI. So it was I'm not saying it's easy, but 100-fold easier than what young people have today.
No, and the boomers, they're not the great generation that survived World War II, right? The boomers are the 60s people. Like they thought there was free love, and like they benefited from the giant industrial shift that happened after World War II that created the greatest era of prosperity ever. They attribute it to themselves, not to the people who sacrificed to get there. And now that they're in their twilight years, they don't don't care. Even though they're supposed to be the ones who care, their actions speak so much louder than their words when you look at how they vote for their own pocketbooks. But so much to talk about in Canada. I don't know how we fix it, honestly.
Well, I think fixing the media is a huge thing that we need to tackle. I think the media is the worst thing to ever happen to Canadians. They're upholding a corrupt and dangerous government. Canada, like, it is inarguable that Canada is in free fall. It is in decline in every single area of life. It's getting more dangerous, for example. And because the media is not doing its job, people aren't making educated decisions. They're not making smart decisions with their money. They're in places that are maybe dangerous. So, like, one video that I saw of yours recently was about this incident in Victoria, BC, this July. Do you believe that CBC covered this the same way that they would a normal crime event?
No, it's just a fact. You have men attacking young women with machetes because they're showing skin and being out in public. And so CBC in that jurisdiction runs the story of a drunk white guy in Nova Scotia yelling at a woman in a hijab, and doesn't even run the story of the immigrants attacking these citizens. Like it's almost hard, I think, for a lot of reasonable people to think that the media could be so lost, because it just seems nefarious that you wouldn't cover that story, because you don't think the citizens are capable of digesting that there can be bad actors from different groups who have come to our country, right? It's almost like they're shoving the truth down our throats to say it's not the immigrants who are the problem, it's the white people. Like that's really what the mandate is. If you strip it all away, and it's not to be racist, it's just that's what the mandate is. The oppressor is the white person. The oppressed is the person from a different country. And they have a moral code, the media, that they can't say that somebody who has a different type of melanin might be morally corrupted.
Unless they're white. Then they'll
that's
say
what I mean.
it.
Like, no, that's what I mean. A different type of melanin. Like, if they have a different shade of skin, they can't be morally corrupt. The only ones who are corrupt. And then I think I put on that piece that ridiculous video that the BC government did of showing hate crimes in BC. And it was like, a white lady spitting on a disabled Muslim woman in a wheelchair, telling her to get off the walking path. Like, it was just all white people doing hate crimes.
Like something that's literally never happened. Or if
Never.
If it did, I'm surprised. But that's like the scene that they made up for that ad.
What, did you see that video?
No.
Oh my God, there's a clip of it on my content, but you should watch the whole video. It's like there's this nice white lady jogging, and then there's a woman in a hijab in a wheelchair on the path, and then she stops and goes, "This is for runners, not disabled people," and spits on her. And then there's a black guy filming it, and then there's Asian people going, "Oh my God!" And then like you couldn't, it wouldn't make it into a movie script because it'd be too ridiculous. But it was just 3 examples of hate crimes done by white people. It was like ridiculous.
Meanwhile, that scene played out in real life. That's probably like a white liberal woman who's so terrified of being called a name that she'd be bending over backwards not to offend anybody.
No, exactly. Or maybe the video should be, men from a South Asian country with machetes hacking young girls, because, that's a hate crime. Maybe we need to promote that on the news so that the new people to Canada know that that's not acceptable. Right? But we're not even messaging to our new citizens what the standards are.
So, like, I'm a woman, obviously, a real biological one who has 2 girls, and I'm not a helicopter parent. We live on an island. I let my little girls hunt, drive their own boats, go anywhere on this massive lake that we live in. I do not let them go in town. Canada does not feel safe. I don't like them walking around downtown. There's drug addicts everywhere. There's like straight up criminals, homeless people. And it's not the homeless that are the issue. It's the drugs, obviously. I've never felt so unsafe in Canada as I have the last 10 years. And I just made a satire video about the man in the Good Life gym with the kirpan, who wasn't even a kirpan, it was a hunting knife. And he's causing a big scene. He's trying to work out with a blade. And I thought, how ridiculous. I'm not allowed to carry pepper spray in this country. Like, we have hunting rifles that are always at risk of getting taken. So I'm not allowed to be armed. But this hostile gentleman can walk around with a sword? No. Either it's the same rules for everybody, or it's not a rule at all. But somehow we've accepted certain skin colors can have exceptions to different laws and rules.
There's actually a legal element to that, because Jagmeet Singh's brother went on that guy's channel, and his brother's a lawyer. And his brother goes on it, and this guy set this up for a social media moment. Like, he's actually gaslighting the Canadian public. Like, he set this up to videotape it, because the guy's got no shirt.
Also not allowed in the gym. Yeah.
No. Jagmeet Singh's brother goes on, and he's like, "I'm a lawyer, and it's settled law that in Canada we can bring our kirpan knives into any place we want." And I'm like, first of all, if you're a lawyer, you should lose your license, because that he was referencing a charter case. The charter only applies to government. It doesn't apply to private institutions. So if I own a private company, I can say you can't come in with that. Right? Like, it's a different, but he's trying to gaslight the Canadians to think that this is just acceptable. And then when I interviewed a religious leader from the Sikhs, because there's some wonderful Sikh people, like, they fought in World War II alongside the British, hardcore, good business people. And a lot of them are like, look, this guy's out of control, because under their religion, you can wear a pendant with the kirpan on. You can actually, the pendant is observing your religious obligations. So when somebody comes in and brings a big knife in, to say that that's settled law in a country where we're not allowed to bear arms, but like, if you come from one segment, because people are scared of being called racist, you let somebody have a knife that could kill somebody easily on them and nobody else is armed, is ridiculous. But if we can't wake up to the lunacy, it's like we're living in that movie Idiocracy. I don't know if you saw that movie. I highly recommend it.
Idiocracy? No.
Oh, have you not seen it? It was made before smartphones. Watch it with your family. You won't believe how prescient it is as to what we are in. So it's essentially, it just shows that humans just breed themselves into being, mentally the R word. But society is still there, but everything is breaking apart. And it just kind of shows society. And this one guy gets teleported into the future from now, and where all of society are just idiots. And we're actually seeing it in real time in our institutions.
I mean, I think society has absolutely lost its mind. I don't know about you. I feel like it didn't come from here. We know that places like China have infiltrated Canada. We know that communists have a long-term plan. We know that China is they're fueling anti-American sentiment. We know that that's happening. When I see all this woke nonsense, when I see the country just like eating itself alive, I can't help but think that places like China or Russia are just sitting and watching and laughing at how weak and foolish we are. Like, do you think this stuff happened all on our own? Or do you think there's like international interference?
No, I've been calling that alarm bell for a while. It is clear that bad actors who seek to do damage to the West have been slowly infiltrating the institutions. And there's some strategic philosophers in the past that said the way to conquer the West is not through troops, it's through the long march through its institutions. So, and because China thinks in 25-year blocks, right? And other, people think long range. We're trapped in these 4-year election cycles in the West, which really means 2 years, which means placating the people who are asking for the most. So we can't actually like do a long-term plan like we should for our family or our company. But they know that if we just put in money slowly, nobody will notice. We'll get footholds. Nobody will investigate. And right now our educational system is an absolute disaster. Like the universities, 90% should be shut down or redone. They're not providing what they need to be. And they've been captured, ideologically captured. That's one of the institutions. Then government. So you bring tons of immigrants in. They get hired because they're in the categories. They get into positions of power. And now you've got this web. I did a post yesterday in California. There was a mayor just pled guilty to acting as an illegal agent for the Chinese government in Arcadia, California. Now, that's the one person we caught. China is very sneaky. Right. So why would they have a mayor working for them? I bet you that's not their only thing. Right. And we also know that they were interfering with the federal. I think they're actively involved with the First Nations community, like funneling money into them because they want to get these land claims and then they'll just be able to get the resources and ship them to China, kind of like what they were doing in Venezuela. But if you can't have a discussion about it without being called a racist, how can you fix the problem? And that's why, the elbows up people who love Carney are just in la la land. Like they're just flapping their arms like wings and just like, I don't know how we fix it. And I've been begging the conservatives to take it more seriously, but they seem like they're scared of being called racist. And, we're just not having a good discussion about it.
And the average person that's kind of participating in these things, I think people thought that they were harmless. The first time I heard a land acknowledgement, for example, I thought this is dangerous. I can't believe you're doing that. But the amount of people that just play along, I'm like, how could you think that that would lead to a good place? It's this utopian, like you said, kumbaya vision. That, we just have to say these things. We just have to virtue signal. I just have to put up the flag. I just have to say I'm on this land. And then that's it. That's all we have to do. It's like, oh, no. You are basically admitting that you're guilty by doing these things. You're guilty. You're on someone else's land. Of course, that's going to lead to the exact place that we're in right now, where people's property rights are actually at risk now.
Yeah, I don't like BC. I don't even know how to deal with BC. Like the land acknowledgements to me, they're just incredibly frustrating to anybody who's actually had agency in running a business or doing something difficult in the military or working a farm. Like just saying we acknowledge you're on land, who cares? Like if you acknowledge you're on land, pay rent or shut the F up. Like if you're on the land, pay rent. I asked the director of this theater, like, how much are you donating of your total ticket sales? None. I'm like, so then you're just admitting you've stolen their land and you're not doing anything other than bragging about it is what a land acknowledgement is to me. Yeah, I just acknowledge I'm on my neighbor's property. I'm not paying rent. Like what's the fucking point? But we're all just banging our heads against the wall because these people are lunatics who walk around thinking they're better than the hardworking people who have their own businesses, who are paying taxes, who are paying their bills, creating things. And the exodus from Canada is crazy. I was at a conference talking to immigration lawyers in the States. And they've never seen more applications from Canada to go into the States. And they're all entrepreneurs who are worth like, $500,000 or more. And when I talk to Canadian immigration lawyers, the people coming in from the US, blue hairs, nose ring, resume says Starbucks. Who's going to win that battle for top talent in the next 10 years?
Man, I think we're going to see like a North Korea, South Korea thing. I've heard that too from friends that are immigration lawyers, that there's a mass exodus of the builders, the entrepreneurs, the wealthy people. They're all fleeing to the US, and we're getting all of the US's victims. And then we'll
Who
actually
just
get to
costs
see.
a fortune. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
we're gonna
problem,
actually see how this
and what they
plays
don't
out.
understand is Canada was so successful when it started, and like was known, its military in World War I and II was known as the toughest military in the world, because our citizens had to live on the Canadian Shield or in the prairies, right? Like there's no safe space card in February in Saskatchewan, right? Like no, like you have to work hard, and the people who are coming up here, they're soft, right? And when the government can't afford to pay their way anymore, they're just gonna, where are they gonna run to? I have no idea. Maybe they're all gonna go to Vancouver if they can get across the mountains.
Hey, Sovereign Minds, a quick word from our sponsor. Look, it's really easy to get lost in all the problems that we face right now. But lucky for us, we do have access to a plethora of great solutions for taking our power back and creating more freedom in our lives. And if you value the same things as me, freedom, autonomy, community, solutions, prosperity, you're going to want to check out this summit. The Expat Money Summit is hosted by Mikhail Thorup. He's the founder and CEO of Expat Money, an international investor and expat with 26 years of experience living, investing, and doing business around the world. He's also a popular guest on this show. Mikhail has traveled to 100 plus countries and has helped thousands of entrepreneurs, investors, and families legally diversify internationally. This year's theme is Freedom Rising in Latin America. It's going to highlight the region's growing opportunities for expats and investors. You're going to learn about second residencies, international real estate, offshore banking, asset protection, tax optimization, and global investing in Latin America. You'll hear from top residency experts, attorneys, investors, and expats who have successfully built their own Plan B in this region. The summit is designed for freedom seekers, entrepreneurs, investors, business owners, retirees, digital nomads, and anyone looking to create more freedom and optionality in their lives. The summit focuses on practical legal strategies to diversify internationally in an increasingly uncertain world. And the best part is, the event is completely free to attend, but you have to register in advance. It's going down October 1st to 2nd this year, and you can reserve your ticket at expatmoney.com/Karla. That's Karla with a K. You can also get free replays for life, access to bonus VIP-only panel discussions, and a ton more with a VIP ticket. Get a 20% discount on VIP tickets to the summit by using the discount code Karla. Again, that's Karla with a K. Tell us about your time in the military. I imagine you joined because you felt like this country was worth defending back then. What was that experience like?
Yeah, what's kind of missing is top performers can change their mind based on new evidence and can so I started off as an entrepreneur when I was in high school. And then my dad lost his company because one of his partners stole it all and went back to Greece. And so we went from well off to no money. And then that was just before I went to university. So I had to work full time in university. And I kind of went from a conservative who thought anybody who didn't have money was lazy to seeing that people could have misfortune. Right. And then I watched my dad not be able to get a job, and it kind of broke my heart because of all that stuff. And I was like, so I kind of grew my hair out, became a bit of a hippie, went to a couple Grateful Dead concerts, not aging me. It was at the end of their tours. And, I loved how people were kind to each other, but I also always wanted to start businesses. And back then I felt liberals, they believed in the country, but they just wanted it to improve. They believed in the values. They said, hey, we could execute on the values a little bit more fairly than what had been done 50 years ago or 60 years ago. But they still believed in the West. But I find now liberals, they're not liberals, they're revolutionaries. Now they don't believe in the principles of the country anymore. They think the principles need to be torn down, like what Mondami said. And how this links back to the military is, having been in Africa and Yugoslavia and Asia and worked in NATO headquarters, like when you see enough of the completely incompetent political systems that exist and what happens and how easy it is for people to kill each other who used to be neighbors and what real struggles are, it's doubly frustrating to come to Canada and see what we have and then see these freaking idiots rip down what Canada and the US or England had built as the best places to be in the world. And now we're just allowing these bad actors to come in and have us attack our own system at its core, rather than just say, hey, let's improve it. But so, the beauty of being in the military is it gives you perspective. Like when you've kind of been in some danger zones, like you don't have a breakdown when things go tough. But I don't think we're building resilience in Canada anymore. And we're actually making fun of the people who take a risk.
When I was younger, I used to think multiculturalism was something to celebrate, that it was a really important part of Canadian culture. And now I definitely see the dangers. The danger without assimilation. And that is definitely where we're at, and the reason that we're seeing so many problems right now. There is no Canadian culture. There is no effort to make people assimilate. And with these cases that we're seeing right now too, where, someone commits a horrific crime, but they're trying to become a Canadian citizen. So they get off easy because they don't want that to affect their immigration status. Like, this should be the best country in the world. It should be the most prosperous country in the world. It's a privilege to come here, not a right. I think if you're trying to come to Canada, you should be terrified to even litter. Like, you shouldn't even throw a Kleenex on the ground. You should value coming here so much that you respect it, you cherish it, because we obviously can't bring everyone into the country. And we're, again, I guess it's this poisonous tolerance or suicidal empathy, like God Saad talks about. We're letting people just absolutely wreck this country and take advantage of our tolerance.
At some point, this perspective just pops in my head, but we have to play the immigration game like you would play a board game. Like, there's winners and there are losers, right? And if we want to protect what we've built and our families and our tribes, we have to get the best people in our country. And that's where multiculturalism is amazing. If I can get the best doctors out of Iran and the best engineers out of India, and they want to come, because it takes a century to build an amazing society. You just don't say, okay, we're going to be an amazing society. You actually have cultural norms that are taught and some cultures are just better than others. And you're not allowed to say that, but I've been so hesitant to say this kind of globalist thing because it sounds conspiratorial, but the analogy that I think it's like, because I had occasion to listen to some top WNBA executives when I was in LA a while ago, and you might enjoy this example. Essentially, the West is like Caitlin Clark, like amazing, right? But then when I was listening to the WNBA executives, they're like, we don't think there should be a star in the WNBA. And we don't think it should be Caitlin Clark because she doesn't represent the identities who should be recognized across. And so they kind of want to make everybody the same, but they don't understand that, like, Caitlin Clark's excellence raises the boats of all of the other players. The salaries will go up if we celebrate, right? But if you mute her and try and say everybody should be the same, you won't have that growth. Like, the West has created a lack of poverty in tons of other countries. There's never been less poor people in the world, starving people in the world, because the West has shared those things and people. But it seems like right now we're trying to bring down the best in order to make people who didn't do the work feel better about themselves. And then, to your point, don't vet who comes in and then just think that it's going to be amazing because all humans are equal. Well, they're not, based on their upbringing, their culture, what they value, how they treat women, how they treat the environment. And I just feel if there was aliens upstairs watching us, they would just be like literally laughing.
Yeah.
Like, just be like, what are these idiots doing? It's like you're watching a sports game and the coach is doing the wrong play and they're like, what are you doing? This is nonsense. I bet on you guys. Like,
well, Sam Cooper just did a story on the two MS gang members. I'm like, how did these guys get in the country? It's tattooed on their forehead.
I was going to say.
They're part of this gang. Well, and it's just not a good understanding of these. Not every I'm going to get lambasted for this, but certain cultures don't mix. I had Lauren Southern on the podcast once, and she got into heaps of trouble for throwing a pride parade in an area that was a high Muslim population in the UK. Not just Muslim, but people that believe in Sharia law. Well, that caused a scene. But she was doing that to prove a point. You can't have a progressive society that wants to promote gay rights and introduce people that believe in Sharia law and think that those two things are going to mix. They don't. And you had a video of an excellent example of this in Michigan. where it was a very liberal, progressive city, and they let in tons and tons of Muslims. They became the entire city council. The second that they had power, they banned the pride flag. This is something that people refuse to look at because they don't want to be called a name.
I'm glad you brought it up. One, because that video resulted in Rogan following me and reaching out. We've been chatting, and that was been on my vision board for a couple of years to connect to Rogan. The next one is Elon. Yeah, it's Hamtramck, Michigan, and it was a Polish-Ukrainian community, well done. And then all of a sudden, some of the liberal ladies got involved, brought in Yemeni and Bangladesh immigrants. Then they just started pouring in, banned the pride parade, banned the pride flag, took away the rainbows, and then they're upset about it. And I'm like, well, and what I think is interesting, I was on the golf course and I was golfing with this very annoying retired principal who'd been his teacher his whole life. And my son's a little conservative, and he leans over to my son. He goes, if your mom's a teacher, how can you be conservative? Because, like teachers are, and then I gave him that example, and he's like, oh yeah, that's disturbing that would happen. He goes, but you know what the problem with that is? So this is a very liberal retired principal who's getting like $120,000 a year on a pension, not working, doesn't tip the girls at the beer cart, like just one of those annoying bureaucrats. And he goes, you know what the problem with that story is, Philip? The Trump idiots are just going to use that as fodder. And I'm like, no, my friend, that the problem is the liberal retards don't see it as evidence of what's going to happen if you allow people who don't share your values to take over. It is just pure evidence. And if you don't pay attention to it, it could be too late by the time we turn around, as it's too late in France, Germany, and some parts of England. Like, how do you fix it when it gets past the point of no return? Like, people have to come in and respect. The Canadian Armed Forces has this example that still kills me that didn't get much attention. So they do their basic training in Saint Jean, Quebec. And when they say that the recruiting numbers are up, it's because they're allowing permanent residents to join as a path to citizenship. So these people are kind of coming over in waves now before they're a citizen can join the military, which is, controversial in itself. But they had a platoon that was full of all of these permanent residents, and different tribes from West Africa were having fights against each other in their basic recruit training. And they refused to take orders from female master corporals and sergeants who were in charge of the training so like right in that example, you see like 3 or 4 layers of ridiculousness of why it doesn't work to just think you can insert, these leaders here because we want them to be, but it's people from another country who they refuse to take an order from a female. And then they were having gang wars in the thing. They had to like shut down all of the training. And now they're all living in a tent compound, being paid their salary and not training. We're going to get strong neck muscles from shaking our head at how much stupidness there is in the world.
That crowd loves to talk about privilege, and I'm not a big fan of that word and using it in excess. But one thing that's definitely happening is people have Western privilege. They think again that we can mix these groups of people and that they're not going to be any problems, or that those bad things, they only happen in other countries, not our country. Our country is better than that. And again, I think it circles back to our broken education system. I did a poll on my X account the other day asking who learned about the dangers of communism and socialism in school. I didn't. I recently went to the Human Rights Museum, even in Winnipeg, and there are no displays about the dangers of communism and socialism, just the far right. And in Canada, it's amazing. Whenever the media refers to just conservatives or normal people, it's always far right, MAGA. I'm like, well, what's far right about what they're talking about? We want safe streets. We want managed immigration. We want to be able to afford a house. That doesn't.
Yeah, that's called normal people.
Right? Normal people.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're far right if you don't agree that men can become boys, you know what I mean, with a little counseling and some injections. Like, I'll give you an example of how, just to keep it interesting in a way, not totally. My firm has a medical malpractice case. I just want to show you how it's infiltrated into the daily life. This wonderful woman was going to do fertility IVF with her husband, but she had issues with her uterus. and they had to take it out on an emergency basis. But she had the meeting to harvest eggs 2 months later. And so they all knew she was doing this. She wakes up and the doctor's like, this female doctor's like, oh, I'm sorry, we took out your ovaries too. And she runs out, and then her husband calls me, and I'm like, okay, turn your phone on and record, because doctors are taught to come in and apologize when they make a mistake because it reduces the lawsuits. So they're going to come back in with the team and apologize. Ask him what happened. Buddy puts on his phone. They come back in. They're like, what happened? How could this come? And the surgeon, who I've found out's had 2 bad surgeries in the past, literally says this, Karla. I'm sorry. It's like, we've just been doing so many gender reassignment surgeries lately where we just scoop everything out that we just did what we've done the last 50 times. That's what she said I've got it on recording. And,
Wow.
and they're like, and they won't, they won't pay for, because she's now menopause at 30. She's got all these drug issues. But to say that I just became one, I have no idea how many of those surgeries they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Lucky she didn't come out with a penis too.
Yeah.
Just doing this all the time. Here you go.
Oh my God. I didn't even think of that. And then you throw maid on top of that. You throw, there's just so much stuff going on that we really don't know the extent of it. And I just don't want your listeners, my listeners, to get to I don't know when the anger is not healthy or it's healthy, or what we can do to kind of be positive about this. But I just want somebody, we need a Murdoch, somebody in Canada who has enough funding to put together a proper news channel or news agency that kind of platforms some of the good independents like yourself and all the rest around, and just kind of get some money behind it so people can say, hey, look, I can go here and actually get some useful information on what's going on. But we don't have somebody stepping up. I don't see it really happening in Rebel, but we don't have that alternate to the current news thing. And it needs to come from a philanthropist who wants to make a difference by putting some money behind it.
I'll talk to you off camera. I have some friends here that might be building that right now, and I think it's good news. I mean,
I'd love to help that.
One thing that I do see as good news is I see Eric Lombardi stepping forth as a Liberal candidate who is opposed to all of the lunatic policies and just actually trying to show up as a moderate. That's really good news, because that's one thing that I don't really see of the left. The people on the right will rip each other apart all the time, criticize their politicians, criticize the policies. It's a good thing and a bad thing, because we're constantly fracturing, where people on the left just stay together no matter how bad it gets. We're never going to criticize. We're just going to stay together. And I think it's actually a really good sign to see that there's actually someone that's like, hey, I'm a normal person. I don't believe in a lot of these far left policies. I think that is a good sign, but I think things move in cycles, and it's going to take a lot to turn the ship around. And to answer your question about, you don't want to complain, you want to be positive, but there are just way too many problems. I don't know the answer to it. And it's definitely being weaponized against conservatives right now. Andrew Coyne just put out an article about conservatives learn how to be patriots. My response to that is putting your blindfold on and allowing the greatest country on earth to fall apart for no reason. That's not patriotism. That's suicide.
Honestly, that guy puts an idiot in a village out of work somewhere. The quality of his writing is he's so arrogant and unintellectual. And I would pay $10,000 to be able to debate him on Facebook Live for half an hour. But I can't get anybody to debate on that side. Right. And that's why you're not seeing, many conservative good thinkers being brought onto these media shows, because they can't sustain their arguments. To say that you just need to blindly follow, it's essentially telling conservatives to be children, but conservatives are the architects of their own failure also. They tend to, when I was trying to help out with the trucker convoy thing at one point, and I was brought in as a possible strategic consultant, but I was an outsider, and because I wasn't diehard one party or the other, but I believed in what the truckers were doing and wanted to help. And I said, don't park. I'm gather outside of the downtown core, drive through 3 times a day slowly, right? Honk your horn, and then bus people in, and then as humans, sit on Parliament Hill and call for Trudeau until he comes out. Right? And they were like, no, we can park. And they were so caught up in their own story that they realized they really lost the messaging campaign. But in their bubble, they thought they were winning because they were having barbecues and they were good people, right? But I said, you've raised a couple $1,000,000. Go steal one of the Liberals' media PR people because they're mercenaries. They're not Liberals. The Liberals just pay the most money for the most competent people and they don't care about their politics. You know, the conservative strategist wouldn't hire the best PR person if she was pro-life. You know what I mean? Even though, you know what I'm saying, like the politics, and that might be principled, but there's times where you have to win and you have to get the best people. And it's not the rural person from up north who is the most conservative, right? Like, and that's one thing. Plus conservatives have to learn how to be disruptive, like the kind of more, the old PCs. They don't want to be disruptive. They want the Brian Mulroney, Joe Clark days where they could be polite. Like the one thing whether you like Trump or not, the guy's a master at media. He is the master at owning a narrative. And we're at the point now that if we're going to change anything, it has to be disruptive. There's just too many people in government that don't want to do it. Like you have to lay off 60% of them, right? Like you have to kind of, otherwise I don't think there's a way to fix it gradually because there's too many people dependent on the government until we disrupt it. And
we need a Melee or a Bukele to come in here with like a blowtorch.
Yes. And that's why I was so furious when Pierre wouldn't go on Rogan before. I know his advisors, and they were just cowards, you know. And he wouldn't go on Rogan before the election. I'm like, you would have gone on Rogan, you could have mobilized hundreds of thousands of young men to vote who didn't vote before, right? 100%. But you didn't because you listened to these cowards who I know them. They're lawyers, they're advisors who just want it to be like the old way. They want to keep their job. They've never won anything. We need somebody to step away from the establishment, and you know. I don't know who it is. You know, I don't know if it could be Kevin O'Leary now. I don't know who has like a microphone and a chutzpah to kind of inspire Canadians. But
I mean, media really is our tool. It's all that we have left. That's why I'm so thrilled to see your hot takes, to see the content, the videos, and I'm the same. I'd love to just focus on what's good and right, and I definitely do try and paint a vision for Canada. Like I said, like the most prosperous nation on earth. We should be the most peaceful, the most prosperous. There's no reason why we can't go there. Decline is a choice. Like that's my vision for Canada.
What about Karla running for office? You got the looks, you got the platform, you got everything. Like, what are you
thinking about tackling some local politics, actually. Yeah,
awesome.
It's not what I want to do at all, but I figure if I'm going to complain about it, I might as well get my hands dirty. So it might be happening here soon.
Embrace the Spencer Pratt strategy.
I was thinking that.
Conservative. It's the only, but I'm trying to help a bunch of candidates and they're scared. They don't want, but you know, the only way you can win, you need to have a villain. Like every story needs a villain. If you're going to run for office, you need to have a villain named. You can't be scared to not name the villain. The current mayor of this town has turned it into a zombie wasteland while wasting millions of dollars on what he calls a homeless issue when it's a drug issue. You know, like you have to not be scared to say where the villain is and how you're going to help them fight against the villain.
Well, we should talk because I'm definitely not afraid and I'm already a pariah in this community from this content. So there's no point in me trying to be picture perfect and polished because that ship sailed a long time ago. So I might as well go full Spencer Pratt, 100%.
Good for you. We'll talk again for sure.
Phillip, thanks so much for your time here today. Where can people find you?
On Instagram, it's the Rogue Lawyer _. You can just look for Phillip Millar on YouTube. I have a podcast called The Art of the Brand and the Rogue Lawyer. Probably Instagram is the best. The Rogue Lawyer _ and follow because I got a lot of people listening, but you know, they don't always follow even though they love the content, but it's doing well.
And hopefully we'll see you.
And help me get on Rogan.
I was just going to say, hopefully you're on Rogan here soon. Awesome, my friend. I will take all of that in the show notes and listeners just scroll below and definitely go and watch some of Phillip's videos. They're amazing hot takes. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Ciao.